Greetings, everyone. For this mini lesson where I talk about citations, bibliographies, and the course annotated bibliography task, I want to use examples from Abrams Text Empowered. It's our free online text. And so I want to first start by talking about the differences between citations. So a citation is you basically taking note of something. And we have two citation styles that we're going to be introduced to in English 101. When you go on to other classes, you may spend more time on APA than we have in this class, or you might find yourself spending more time in MLA. This just depends. But these are the two most popular styles. And so for this course, you can explore both of them. Now, in our text, since Abrams situates himself in the humanities, I believe all of our examples in Abrams text are MLA. So the first thing I want to just remind us of is that when you cite a source in a piece of writing, so for the sake of conversation, I'll call all writing in which cite sources research-based, but it could be anything. That could be a pamphlet, it could be an academic research paper, it could be a website, but if you're quoting other people, we're going to call that research-based writing or writing that uses research outside information from the author didn't create. And so what I have on the page here is an example from chapter 3 of the Abrams text. So I just wanted to point out that in chapter 3, because the writers are all writing about personal experiences, as I scroll through down this page of this first student model, you will find that there are no cited sources. And because that story, that piece of writing was all uniquely the author's. The author didn't include anything that came from an outside source. And as we scroll down this second example, we'll see the same thing. So even though you see the teacher takeaways, there's no cited material because it's not research-based writing. Now, some people may have a question about that, and I will just assume this question were asked. What if in my personal writing, I actually did cite, say, the name of a TV show or a quote from a book that I read? Yeah, if that's the case, and it's still your personal story, if you did that, you would add a works cited page and just list that one item. But none of our personal narrative examples do that. Okay, so I want to move on and just take a look at the model text by students from chapter 6. So in chapter 6, the students are examining other texts that are written by other people, or in this case, I think one of the examples is of a song. So the writers are examining texts. They're analyzing texts that are created by other people. So since that is happening, even though most of the content is the author's interpretation, but in analysis, the focus is on a text that someone else has produced. So if that is the case, you're already talking about a source that you will likely cite. And we can see here in this example, the student citing content in this paragraph. And anytime we see like parenthetical references, so this is an example of what's called in the text citations. You will hear us just refer to it as in text, but what it means is this person has cited information inside of the text that they've written in their paragraphs, in their sentences. They're taking information from another source, and we will find clues to that because we will see in the text, we will get something like a direct quote. So here we have a direct quote because we see the parentheses, this direct quote, beginning parentheses, ending parentheses. And at the end, we get information that we can find that direct quote on this page of a document or a text that is authored by Rodriguez. So this is an example of citations, what we call in-text citation. And this is a piece of writing that uses research. So the person is using in-text citation. And as I said at the start, this class is in the humanities. And so I can also tell you that this way of citing the source is following MLA style. I know that. I also know that because when we scroll down this document, we're going to find a works cited page or a works cited list. And that always starts on a new page. So if this example were written in a Word document or on Google Docs, this works cited page will start on a brand new page. I also know it's MLA because it's called works cited. If it were APA, they would call this same list with this one thing on it, but this citation page in APA would be called references, because they would be citing the sources in the text following the rules that are in APA. And that is, again, APA is used in the social sciences. So this is where we get to our first example of citation pages. And most people know citation pages because they see them with essays in which people have used some research or their cited content. And so for this example in chapter 6, because the purpose of this assignment is to analyze one single text, there's only one reference. This is the only text this writer has used to talk about the analysis of something that has to do with this particular, I think it's a article or short story. So this is our first example of, oh, look at that. In the text citations using MLA and an MLA styled works cited page. So if you scroll through the examples of chapter 6, because of the type of writing they're doing, you will find MLA is used, I believe, throughout them all. And then we also can double check because we have the works cited page. So even in this second example, one source, because the task here is to do an analysis of one text. And so yes, you must cite that text because you're talking about it. So I hope this is giving you a little bit of insight on how to distinguish between one, APA style and MLA style. I don't have an APA in front of us. You will have to trust me on this. And you can look it up and see an example APA essay or document in Purdue OWL. So there we have it, works cited page. This, however, is different from, we will see shortly, different from annotated bibliographies and bibliographies. So here we are from chapter 8. This is a chapter on writing a proposal. Chapter 8 is one of the chapters we're using as you get closer to doing the research project. So it's part of research-based writing project that you'll be doing for class. The reason I wanted to show you this example is because even though this student is not writing a paper at this moment, the student is doing research. So they're collecting information. They're doing some research about their paper that is coming up. And so they're going to put together their ideas based on the research they have so far, and they are going to write a research proposal to their instructor. And so this example here takes you step by step through how this particular student is looking at their research topic and asking questions about it and doing ongoing research to gather information about their subject. And as we scroll through and we look at the student's notes, we'll see at the bottom of this pre-proposal, because it's not the actual proposal yet, the student is still citing the sources that they're looking at to help them figure out what direction they may take in their actual research paper. And so when you combine just answering those questions, answering these prompts or these specific areas, thinking about where you are in your research question, and you have some sources, well, you can combine that and then create a proposal. So this is an example of a proposal for research that the student is going to do on a specific topic or research question. And as you can see, the student is talking in first person. This is what I plan to do. This is what I'm hoping to examine and learn more about. But when we get to the end of this proposal, there's a works cited. So even though this is not an official academic paper, it still shows that people use research in different aspects. So this too has a citation page because the person is citing content in it. And I wanted to give you an additional example of how research writing might work, even though you may not be turning in a traditional paper, and you still have to cite your sources. So far, we've just looked at sources that are cited because they accompany a written document in which those sources were quoted. So here's the other thing. If a source is listed on your citation page that comes along with a written document, every source that's cited here must be cited in the actual document. So if this student had 3 things cited in these paragraphs, they should have 3 citations. There should not be anything listed here that's not in the paper. And if it's in the paper or if it's in the document, it should be listed there in the citations list. So just keep that in mind. This is a very key difference between using citation pages with written document. And then we go to chapter 9 and talk about bibliographies and annotated bibliographies. So the key difference between a bibliography and the citation pages we just got finished looking at that accompany a written document is that bibliographies are research tools. These are tools you use to help you organize information, organize your citation and your research. So that's what a bibliography does. It's a list of things that you found that you are going to go back and investigate further, but you're collecting that. So it's kind of like you're going and gathering all of the ingredients that you might need to make a cake, and you have them all in one place. And you can identify them because you've listed them by author name and title and things like that. And so, and you are also eventually using a particular documentation style, either APA or MLA, to cite the sources correctly on this document. Now, when you annotate a bibliography, that means you're going to add some additional information. So an annotated bibliography is a list of sources that you are using to organize your research for a specific research topic or question. And then you're going to add at least one note. That note or that annotation is a summary. So here in our textbook, they say a brief paragraph for each source being examined. So I have an assignment that I have to have, 5 sources in it. My research means I have to go and look for more than 5 sources because you want the best 5 sources. So I'm going to go and research educational access because that's what I'm interested in. And I'm going to find 15 sources. I'm going to list them all on my bibliography. And I'm going to use APA style. And I'm going to list them. And then I will be able to go back and then decide which of those sources that I might want to investigate more. And as I go back to my bibliography, the ones I find that are useful, I will now actually have to read, because you got to actually read a source if you're going to give a paragraph about it. If I'm just citing it, if I'm just getting, my 15 sources, I just want to make sure I have my bibliographical information, last name, first name, where I found it. I don't have to read the whole source for that. But to annotate it, yeah, you're going to have to read your source. And so in annotated bibliographies, when you look in Purdue OWL, you will find that they will give you slightly different information about what you should have in that brief paragraph that comes after your citation. For the purposes of this class, just consider that paragraph that comes after the citation on an annotated bibliography is a summary. You need the main idea for that particular source. So you want to summarize that information. And I'm scrolling through chapter 9 here because it gives you some additional information on an annotated bibliography and information about how it works. But for our class, that first paragraph is always going to be a brief summary of the main ideas in the text. That is what we want. And then you see it has an or an evaluation of the rhetoric, that's the writing choices, or the argument being deployed by the author. For the purposes of our course, I want you to stick with a brief summary of the main ideas. This is something you've already practiced in parts 1 and 2 of the this exercise that you're now completing part 3 for. So yes, that paragraph can do a couple of things. I like to separate these things. So here is my summary. And if you find yourself in another class that you need to do these other things, I would do this separately. So I would make this 2 different annotations. If you had to do both a summary and an evaluation of something in that piece, because these are 2 very different things. Finding the main ideas is not the same thing as evaluating or talking about the argument. Those are 3 different things. So for our class, we want to focus on summarizing the main ideas, because this is enough in and of itself to get really good at only finding the main ideas, not the extra stuff. Also, for this course, you've already practiced this for parts 1 and 2, because I did give you a second annotation, and I call that the application. One second here, I just want to go back to remind you of those parts that you've already completed. So I had you write a summary paragraph and a reflective paragraph. This reflective paragraph is what I call application. You apply something from what you've seen in that text to the situation that you're writing about. And for the course annotated bibliography that you're doing right now, the application is always to your learning. Like, what are you learning about writing? So that I wanted to point that out. So I'm going to scroll down to the examples here in chapter 9, because they give us some examples of annotated bibliographies. And I want to start to wind down this video by saying that one of the reasons you use bibliographies, of course, is to collect information. One of the reasons you start to annotate that bibliography is to sort of see what are the best sources that you have listed on that bibliography. So in the example, the model text by the student authors, in chapter 9, you will find their annotated bibliographies. So for each of the sources, they give us examples of like, what's the main idea? So I'm just going to highlight, I think up to here is all summary. It tells us the main ideas. This part here, these last few lines, when it starts to say this article is useful for, like what this article is useful for, this is telling us that the writer is now shifting focus and saying, hey, this article will help you understand X, Y, and Z. So this is the second part. This is what I was saying earlier, like I would divide these into 2 different paragraphs so that you can clearly see these are the main ideas, because that's really what I want. The main idea here shouldn't be opinion. This should be like, if anyone reads this, they'll walk away with these same main ideas. They'll use different words, but they should have the same main ideas, because there are reading cues in what we read or in what we see that will point out, hey, this is the main idea. Everything else is kind of just developing this main idea. And so if you get an annotated bibliography that was produced by someone else, so like I'm researching things about education, I can go online, I can go to the librarian, which I do, and say, hey, I'm trying to find bibliographies that already exist about educational access. Or can I find an annotated one? That would be even better. But when I do find an annotated one, I should be able to trust that the author of it has focused only on the main ideas. And so this is how another way that annotated bibs are useful for research. If I can find one that's already out there, even if it's say outdated, maybe this example here by Davis Joshua, if it were written, say like if this were 1993, but I'm like, oh, this could still be useful because I can now go and see that, oh, Davis Joshua talks about the subject that I'm interested in, that I'm currently researching, but it was written a long time ago. Let me just go and now look up this person and see if he's has something new. Beautiful. So annotated bibliographies helps us do a better job of doing research. Let's see. I think that is almost all that I wanted to say in this mini lesson about citations and bibliographies. So if you have questions about this task, please post them on Blackboard, use office hours, use the Writing Center, talk to each other using the virtual office on Blackboard, but basically use your resources and take this as an opportunity to practice skills that you're going to have to keep practicing over time.